All right, we're on.
Hello everybody, Craig Tuttle here, and I'm standing here with Sean Warner of PRMG. He is a senior loan officer who's been in the business for a long time. Sean is a people person, great communicator, and his specialties are many. Today he's going to be talking about what you can do with your phone and other social media type things, and he'll be on in just a bit after I talk, but we're proud to have Sean here. Thanks, Sean, for coming.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Okay. So my conversation today is just going to be based a little bit on things that you could do in the market. It's a seller's market, we know that, and there is different strategies and there's different types of brokers, right? So we have seller will accept offers on review date, and we have 4 to 5 days before review dates. We get multiple offers, but they may accept sooner. So example one of a strategy might be you're talking to your buyer, they've been beat out on a few offers, they've escalated, they've done short inspections. These are all standard things that you're doing with the terms, but try this, and then, if it doesn't work, then you can resubmit your offer. So view a home last night, offers could be reviewed on Monday, but seller could accept sooner. That broker is in fact a real estate broker, so I felt better about the approach that let's go ahead and make our expiration 2 p.m. the following day, which would be today. And that way we know if the seller is going to respond sooner. And in that, we put a short inspection time frame. We put a 22 AD, increase the down by 3,000. We offer just straight up 10 grand above list price, no escalation. If that works, fantastic. We can get the inspector who is already ready and on call, and you should have inspectors ready and on call, to go out and inspect the property. And then I sent a message to the broker telling her, hey, this buyer is just crazy about your home. This is why we made the offer this way, and we can get an inspection done quickly, and you don't even have to go pending in the system if you don't want. Even though you mutually accept it back with the MLS, you don't have to input it until 24, 48 hours really to get to the point where if they audit it, you get a penalty. So no worries there. And if we get our inspection done quickly, then she can go pending after we waive it, right? So that's a strategy. What would happen then is if she doesn't accept it sooner, which probably be the case because that's the whole purpose of the MLS, is sellers need to get the most exposure. She could get a higher offer. We can resubmit that offer because it expires at 2 p.m. today. You don't have to go withdraw it or draw a line through anything. You're just going to resubmit a new offer because that one's void. She doesn't respond with mutual acceptance by 2 p.m. or a counter that we can work with. So you're going to go ahead and then take something like that and put an escalator in there after, right? And you might encourage that buyer, go ahead and pre-inspect it. You might be able to get an inspector to give you a verbal and not a full report at half the price of the normal cost of inspection. Older home though, be sure to get a sewer inspect, or at least advise them that they ought to. So you still would use the same elements except for add that 35E and possibly waive that inspection when you submit the new offer, should the other one not get accepted, with that strategy of making it expire that quickly. If you have any questions, give me a call. We can talk about that. Other things that are happening out there that seem to be pretty standard is, these short inspections and escalators, but the 22 AD is coming into play, and that is scary. It doesn't seem right that people should pay over a low appraisal, but the fact is it's happening. And you do all your study with the CMA, and if you don't know this, run the property area, look at a price range. Let's say it's at 350, run 300 to 400. Don't worry about the square footage as much. Go down to your options. If you don't have them under your search, add days on market, DOM, and look at 0 to 8 or 0 to 10, whatever gets you to look at homes that sold quickly, because 0 days is really the same as 8, sometimes 10, depending on the review period, right? And then they don't have to put it in to the MLS till a couple days after if they want to push it. So you look at those properties and you find out what they sold for versus their last list price. So the sales price percentage will tell you. And what we're finding is we're finding 104, 105% on average. That's blended with, of course, some hundreds and some 115s. You need to look through all the pictures, see if it's just absolutely fix and flip cute like the one you're doing, or whatever the condition of the one you're doing, and then select the ones that seem like comparable properties in the effect of condition, and then temper that with, well, maybe that broker took an offer too early, they were an estate sale, I'm gonna throw that one out. What about the one that's 115%, 120%? Well, maybe that one was priced so aggressively low, and you look at it and say, that really wasn't like a fair market value, and that's probably too much. You might throw it out. You then look at the ones by running the CMA landscape on the ones you checked at the sales price percentage versus list price. That's going to give you an idea of what other people have been doing and what you probably need to do to win this offer that you're in. I know it's difficult to educate buyers on this. So with this strategy of the CMA, sales price percentage versus list price, just let them know that we don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does, but looking in hindsight is pretty clear. Final note on that strategy, be careful not to get back into the fourth quarter. It wasn't as hot. You want to go down now that we're in mid-May, back 60, 90 days max to look at this type of analysis. So, in regards to brokers and personalities, know your broker. If you don't know your broker, ask other brokers that are in the office, have you ever worked with this listing broker? And maybe you look up their sales stats and see what their experience is. Maybe they're selling in Puyallup and Graham, and here they got a listing in North Tacoma. And you get a feel for what their experience level is, and you can take that as you may to, evaluate who you might be dealing with on their competency level. However, I always tell folks, if you're a rookie or if you're an experienced broker, it doesn't matter if you underprice it. The market's going to pay what the market's going to pay, and that's what we have found out. So you could then do some analysis paralysis, but in the end, you got to get the buyer to be aggressive. Those are just some ideas and strategies for dealing with buyers in this tough market. I want to skip now over to another type of transaction, which is an off-market sale. We're starting to get hit with some of these opportunities. A seller asked me, hey, as we're getting this ready to go, maybe you've got a pocket listing, they call it. You get a pocket buyer. So I got a pocket buyer and I got a pocket listing, but I don't have an agreement with my seller, and I may not have an agreement with the buyer because, like many of us, we just hope that they trust us and are loyal and use our time wisely. Ultimately, you'd want to have a buyer's agency agreement. If you don't, then just be careful in this situation when you try to bring a buyer and seller on an unlisted property. Not going to get into the entire depth here, but do come to me. This is a very, very legal, ethical situation that you need to properly disclose all of your disclosures and get the agency relationships in place before you actually write the offer. And make sure that we know that who's representing the buyer, who's representing the seller. It's not a selling broker and a listing agent because it's not listed. It's a seller's representative and a buyer's representative. And there are forms for that. When a seller brings you a property that they're not going to list on the MLS, that's a specific property, and they say they're allowing you to sell to a buyer, there is a form for that. So, in regards to these off-market sales, just make sure you disclose it to the seller. You may be able to get a higher price, and to the buyer what the opportunity is like, and that you're going to have to arrange some agency relationships prior to writing the offer. Call me on that. Very deep subject, but really, really important to be, in your legal stance on that, because that's difficult. You're really representing both parties, and there's some limits to your agency law pamphlet that don't apply when you're doing an unlisted property. Final note on that, I'll just enlighten you, is that it doesn't apply in the agency pamphlet for the seller that you're doing the best for them on getting their home exposed the most by putting it in the MLS. And so that's in the form, but it does take that part of the agency law pamphlet out that you need to draw to their attention. And for the buyer, you're not finding them maybe the best possibility. Again, that's in the agency law pamphlet. You're really zoning people in on one property and not using the MLS is the best way to explain that. Okay, another type of thing to talk about is we're not really in this market, but you do have some brokers out there that one of our brokers in the office experienced recently, a personality and that person's strategy and type. And in the recession, we had a lot of brokers that were down at the courthouse steps with investors, and we knew who they were. They were a specific group and type. And it's kind of like commercial investor type, whether they're investing to fix and flip or they're in the commercial business, there's not a lot of absolute loyalty there. Whoever brings you the property is who you're going to list back with or do the business with. And when you're on the selling side of that and you're bringing an investor to a property and you don't have an agreement with a seller, kind of like we talked about a moment ago, it's really dicey for those folks. But there was a small core of them there, and they're still in the market, that operate way different than what we operate as. It's really cutthroat, and it's not transparent. I don't think it's all very completely ethical on what they do, but it's a different animal, and that's just the way it goes. That's how they operate. Not to get into that type of broker, though, in this current market was listing a property, and our broker used the typical forms we just talked about before with an escalator clause and trying to compete. And what did the other broker do? The listing broker came back and said, well, we asked for the highest and best, and that's why we're going to say you don't have to, we're not going to honor your escalator clause in your offer. The seller doesn't have to honor the escalator clause. They can counter you, or they can do what's called highest and best. So circling back to this investor type buyer that was buying at the courthouse and listing fix and flips and such, that's the nature of what they do. They ask for highest and best. If you didn't all remember that, you go back to the bank-owned properties, that the listing broker would say, give us your highest and best by a certain date. Banks didn't allow the escalator clause either. So this broker in this situation just a few days ago says, give us your highest and best. What does our Realty One Group turnkey broker do? a little bit hurt on that. It doesn't make sense. It's logical. We're saying here's our highest and best. We used an escalator, and it just doesn't make sense. It's fair. It's right. And the other broker says, no, we want your highest and best. So sometimes you can't change people, right? We know that in life. Then know who you're working with, what kind of animal they are, because if you continue to press a button on that person, and you probably are right, it's logical, I believe in what our broker was saying, but it might have turned that broker on the other side into, well, I'm not sure I'm going to work with this Realty One Group broker, because he could have just been transparent and told him, you just need to come up $2 or $3 grand. Sometimes you can get the brokers on the other side to sing, meaning tell you what's going on. And in this case, it was really discouraging because they did a great job putting in the offer, the letter from the heart, the escalator, short terms on timelines, and they lost by just a few $1,000s. It was a shame because the escalator could have taken care of that. So there's a few examples of what some of the market temperature is, and usually it's just to say that it's really solid for sellers and it's really tough for buyers, and you don't know which strategy is going to work right, but there's a few, and if you got a new buyer, it's going to be a real tough road for them to get up to that level of these type of aggressive terms. If you're feeling uncomfortable and they feel kind of pressured by you, have them call me. Have them call someone else in the office. You might even ask one of your clients, hey, do you mind just writing a little email that I can share with this new buyer and what your experience has been. Whatever you've got to do to get creative to get your buyer from A to Z. All right. Thank you for your time. we're going to bring Sean Warner up here with PRMG to talk about lending and his mad skills